I first came across NieR Automata back when I was playing many of the big blockbuster titles on the PS4. I think that was like 5 years ago or something. The game was getting a lot of praise at the time, so naturally I wanted to try it out. The series wasn't exactly unknown to me though, like I knew that it was connected to an obscure older title called NieR. But other than that, I didn't know what to expect apart from playing as a blindfolded android in a pretty dress. NieR Automata ended up being one of the best games that I've ever played. Its genre-shifting gameplay and philosophical themes really captured my attention. I eventually played NieR Replicant and fell in love with that as well. And since I made a video on it, I figured I should make one for Automata as well. My thoughts on the game haven't really changed from the first time I played it. Well, actually, there are two big changes. Like, I played through Replicant this time, so replaying Automata gave me more context to the game's lore. Like, I understood a lot of the references, especially in the later parts of the story. The other big change is my perspective, I guess. Like, now I'm in a better place mentally, most of the time. My frame of mind wasn't exactly at its best when I first played Automata, so I feel like the nihilistic themes of the game triggered me for most of my playthrough, which I will get into later. So yeah, I'll be talking about the game as usual in this video, but I'll also go into why NieR Automata means so much to me. With that said, let's get on with the video. NieR Automata takes place many years after NieR Replicant. Machines have taken over Earth, so humanity fled to the moon. In an effort to take back the planet, they send Yorha units, android soldiers that were made to destroy the machines. Among these units is 2B, an android who's deployed to Earth and is partnered up with another unit called 9S. So yeah, you basically go around a post-apocalyptic open world as 2B, fighting machines, accepting quests from the Yorha commander, and helping out fellow androids at a resistance camp. As much as I love NieR Automata now, I wasn't actually that interested in the story when I started the game, but I quickly got attached to 9S and 2B. It was great seeing their relationship develop, especially when I saw 2B's cold nature slowly dropping around 9S. Pascal captured my heart too. He's such a wholesome robot that deserves the world. But other than those characters, I thought the story was going to be a cliche humans versus machines type of thing. Still, I kept playing until the story got deeper and deeper. Eventually, I couldn't put the game down until I saw it all end. But before that happened, I was just having fun with the gameplay and its little quirks. Even just playing through the beginning of the game reminded me of how absorbed I was the first time I played through it. Like, I was so used to playing games that stuck to one or two genres, so it was mind-boggling to me when NieR Automata's prologue went from bullet hell shoot 'em up to RPG hack and slash, all while having dynamic camera angles. I love the standard fights in the game though. The combat's fast and stylish. 2B carries two weapons that deal light and heavy attacks. How are they attached on her back? I have no idea. They're probably floating there using the power of, I don't know, android stuff. Anyway, she can perform combos with them while using her pod to fire attacks at enemies. The fights start out simple, but it can quickly turn into bullet hell situations. The enemy machines release these bubble-like attacks, so you have to either dodge them or slice through them. One thing that made the fights even better is the game's music. NieR Automata's music is so good. It's up there with Replicant as one of my favorite soundtracks in gaming. Of course, the emotional scenes are made even more emotional because of the music, but I loved how it was implemented in fights. It made things so much more intense. Like, there are literally different variations of the same track, so depending on what's happening in the game, it seamlessly transitions from instrumentals to vocals. There's even 8-bit versions of the soundtrack to complement the hacking sections later in the game. Now, 2B's equipment can be upgraded. You can swap out her default weapons to different spears, swords, and bracers. Her robot pod can also be given different attacks, so you can change out its standard bullet attacks into lasers, shields, and missiles. 2B herself can be customized since she has plug-in chips installed in her system. What's interesting is that her default ones are literally the game's UI. So if you take things out like the HUD map and HP gauge, you won't be able to see them on your screen. You can remove her OS chip too if you're that curious. But yeah, you can install chips that give her bonus attack damage and increased movement speed. There's actually an option to automatically sort things with balance chips, so I didn't spend much time customizing the chips myself. I also found more than enough chips just by exploring, opening chests, and retrieving the bodies of dead players. Yeah, if you're playing online, you can get bonus equipment from people who died in the game. Retrieving gives you some of their stuff, which includes money, plug-in chips, and XP. You can also see their customized death message and pray for them, which heals them in their own game. I ended up resurrecting a few of their corpses early on to help me in fights. But other than that, I usually just prayed and retrieved their stuff. You can also retrieve 2B's old body if you die. If you choose to ignore it for too long though, it'll disappear, along with your previously equipped chips. This mechanic kinda reminded me of the Souls games. 2B's old body will always spawn in the same area you died in. But thankfully, I only died a few times in the game, so I didn't really need to do that a lot. NieR Automata is very forgiving, unless of course you're playing on higher difficulties. Now, as much as I love the game, I have a confession. I didn't do most of the side quests. Yeah, I love the game, but not so much that I was willing to backtrack, especially in the abandoned factory. That place really overstayed its welcome for me. It's not just the backtracking that made the side quests tedious. Some of the quests were kind of a pain to find because they're vaguely marked on the map, so you could look like you're in the quest area when in reality it's somewhere above or below where you are. But despite all that, I finally did them, or at least I finished more of them this time. The ones that I completed were actually pretty good, even though the objectives were basically go here, kill this, escort that. Some of the quests had twists and turns that I don't think I would have ever predicted. They built up the world of Automata, and they even foreshadowed a few things in the story. Like, even though I already knew what was going to happen in the game, it still felt like the side quests I completed added so much more emotional weight. But I still think most of them were quite tedious. It's not as bad as NieR Replicant's side quests, but I doubt I would have had fun trying to do them on my first playthrough. I think part of the reason why I couldn't bring myself to do everything is because backtracking isn't limited to the side quests. It happens quite often in the main quests. It's because you'll only be able to experience the full story of NieR Automata if you play the game multiple times, so don't be surprised if you're underwhelmed the first time you see the credits roll. There are more than 20 endings in the game, but you don't actually need to play through all of them. Most of them are joke endings that happen only if you do weird things, like if you decide to eat fish or go for a stroll instead of focusing on an urgent quest. The canon stuff only happens from ending A to E, similar to Replicant. You won't exactly be playing the same thing throughout those playthroughs though, so I thought the repetition wasn't too bad. The game introduces new mechanics the more you play it, and there are a bunch of revelations that make everything worth it. Before I give my final thoughts, I'll be talking about this game on a more personal level, I guess. I mentioned that NieR Automata is a game that means a lot to me, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to make a video about it. At first I thought that replaying the game would just refresh my memories. It definitely helped, of course, but what I didn't expect was how my perspective on certain things were different compared to my past self. There's the obvious stuff, like how I noticed little details that I previously missed. But I think the reason why I felt different was because I was practically a different person back then. I was a bit younger, and it didn't help that I was stuck in a very dark place for quite a long time. It felt like my mental state affected how I enjoyed the game. It didn't help that NieR Automata's story gets quite existential and depressing, so it triggered and reinforced a lot of the more negative thoughts that I already had in my head. Now that I've grown and have become a bit more optimistic, Replaying the game felt like I was going in with a completely new perspective. Sure, Automata gets emotional and stuff, but it also has many lighthearted, funny moments that my younger self couldn't really focus on at the time. It made me appreciate the game more, and I'd say that it even helped me understand myself better. If I'm making it sound like NieR Automata is going to be a triggering game, I don't know how to answer that. Just like every piece of media, I think it'll depend on who plays it and what their circumstances are. It just happened to speak to me at the time because of my own life and my experiences. It made my younger self sad, yeah, but I didn't actually feel that way all throughout the game. What I loved about Automata was despite all the sad, meaningless things that happened in the story, it had hope. I'm doing my best not to spoil anything, but yeah, the game really moved me when I watched the final credits roll. I wouldn't go so far as to say that the game completely changed my life and gave me meaning, but it did heal me for a while. It pulled me out of my own bubble and made me feel like I wasn't alone, which is exactly what I needed at the time. But other than what I personally felt about the game, what frustrated me about my whole experience back then was that I couldn't explain why I thought NieR Automata was amazing to people who have never played the game. And it's because it fully takes advantage of video games as a medium. It has cutscenes, character conversations, and visual novel segments that move the story, but the rest of it is told through a bunch of different ways. It basically uses its gameplay mechanics to give you control through its narrative, which makes the story so much more powerful. To this day, I think that NieR Automata is one of the best examples of how video games can present a story in a way that's completely unique to every other medium. Just like any other game, it's not going to appeal to everyone, but I do think it's worth playing through if you want a one-of-a-kind experience. So for that reason alone, I highly recommend it. And if you can handle more backtracking and repetition, I think that NieR Replicant is worth trying too. Let me know what you thought about the video, and thank you to my patrons at Patreon for supporting my channel. I can finally scratch this out of my games that I have to talk about list. So speaking about NieR Automata, I'm both hyped and cautious about the upcoming anime. I think it'll be hard to tell a story like this outside of video games. Like, the story will literally need to adjust to its medium for it to work. If it's already out by the time you watch this video, I'm really hoping that it turns out good. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.